Out of all the creatures that we encountered in the course of the Yesor Makkos, there were two who were zocha to receive a miyuchadik eschar. We find in this week's parsha, Parshas Va'era, Makkos Tzvardeya, the frogs that jumped into the fiery furnace, that jumped into the tanur, into the ovens. They were zocha to arichas yamim, as clear from the Baal HaTurim and his commentary in this week's parsha Va'era, Paraches Posek Aleph, that Vayimusu, when it says that the frogs died, but the ones that jumped into the oven, they were zocha to a little more time, a little more, days, weeks. They were zocha to arichas yamim. They didn't die together with the rest of the frogs who did perish in the aftermath of the Makkah. Fascinating. They do a gavaldig amaisa of being mekadosh shemayim an kedekach, to the extent that we have a Gemara Pesachim Daf Nun Gimel Amud Beis that Hanani, Mishav, Azariah Lomdu Kavachomer Ma'atzim, they darshan a Kavachomer, inferring from the frogs that if the frogs in Egypt were Moser Snafshon to be mekadosh shemayim, and they're not Metzuva, they're not Balei Bechira, then us, the Balei Bechira, we Kavachomer Bibem Menosha Kavachomer, have to go ahead and jump into the oven rather than bow down to the tzelem of Nebuchadnezzar HaRasha. Those are the frogs mitzad echad. Mitzad sheni, let's fast forward to next week's parsha, Parshas Bo, and we make our way to the last of the Yesor Makkos, Makkos Bechoros. What do we read? Perak Yud Aleph Pasuk Zayin, L'chol Bnei Yisrael Lo Yecharetz Karel of the Shona. Here we are in the course of the last, the final of the 10 plagues. The culmination of all the Makkos that the Ramban and other Rishonim explain were to highlight. Eibishter is in control of every chelik of the Bria, every single aspect of creation. Stipler is Marach and Chayolam Parak Tezvav, how every one of the plagues serve to highlight another aspect, that every chelik of the Bria is controlled, Ach Varak, by the omnipotent Almighty, by the Borei Olam HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kaviyachol. Then we get to the aspect that L'chol Bnei Yisrael, the dogs kept quiet. They kept silent. And what schar do they get? Writes the Mechilt and Parshas Bo. And they get the schar that Lakela Tashlichano. So for all of history, every time we have an Avela Treifa, something goes wrong with the Shechita, you have a mitzvah to go in and give it to a dog. Famous word of the Tolna Rebbe. Rav David Mitolna, Zechat Tzadik V'Kodesh Levracha. Tolna Rebbe tells us that you have these two Baalei Chayim. They did great, courageous acts. HaKadosh Baruch Hu used them as the vehicle to teach us incredible lessons, and yet what? The frogs, they get a little more of a Richas Yamim, and that's it. The dogs get a schar of the Dorei Doros for all of history, that anytime we have an Avela Treifel, a Kelat Tashlichanoso, it goes to the dogs. Why? What's so unique about their schar? Explain the Tolna Rebbe. We see from this contrast that it's more difficult for a person to keep his mouth silent than it is even to jump into a furnace for his friend. To jump into a tanur, to the fiery ovens, to give a kiddush shem shamayim in the world, that still wasn't as great as being mekayim shem shamayim. By what? By staying silent. Incredible miracle. Now remember, these dogs have a difficult time keeping quiet, because the dogs of the world, as the Medrash relates in Shmos Rabbah, Parashalam and Aleph and Osches, one dog starts barking, we know it sets a chain effect into motion, it triggers a domino effect, all you need is one dog to bark, and it sets them all going meshuggah. In fact, scientists already corroborate the idea that dogs' primary time for howling, for making noise is when the night comes on through Chatzos Halayla, and that's precisely when Makkos Bechoros took place, and Afilu Hachi. Even so, the dogs remained utterly reticent, quiet, not a growl, not a howl, and not a peep escaped their lips. Why? What is this meant to show? So perhaps Lefianias Daiti, the idea is as follows. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I want to see that everyone can learn that every chelik of the Bria, no matter how difficult, they know how to be silent. The dogs in Mitzrayim, if you think about the one creature, that it's ingrained in their nature, in their very core essence, to be the ultimate evet, to demonstrate utter and sheer servitude to its human master, the dogs. Rabbi Chiyam writes in Ishmas Kochai, the creature found most often on a leash, on a chain, kosher to its bailim, as Gemara subtly alludes to in Sotah Daf Gimel Amud Beis, that's the dog. A dog cannot climb up, its master's down here. Dogs don't climb up, they can't climb up trees, they can't climb up walls, and a dog's natural stance, its natural gait is going to be to the left of its master. A dog is the paradigmatic eved to its master in this world. So what does it mean, Avdus? Avdus means that when the Borei Olam calls on you, you overcome your core nature and you do the Ratzon Hashem. The Makkos are only completed when what? when even the dogs, the last creature in the world to stay silent. All you need is one dog to start barking, and that's it. The domino effect goes into motion. And here you have dogs watching their masters drop dead in front of their own eyes during the course of Makas B'choros. And when a dog is typically expected to jump up, to react, to make a noise, and they remain silent. Why? Because even the lowly dog recognizes now there only is one master. There's the Adon Olam, there's the Melech Malchi Malachim. And if the Eibishter wants me to keep quiet, that's going to be the way I highlight my sense of servitude. My Avdus Lefonov is going to be manifest by doing what? By staying silent when the Rebbeinu Shalom wants me to be silent. If it's hard for anyone, it's hard for a dog to keep silent. Its masters are dropping dead, and still they kept silent. That's an evidence of the Boreola. And thus, when we turn quickly to the psukim emerging from the myriad creatures throughout the gamut, throughout the scope of the animal kingdom, the last creature to say a posuk on the pages of Perek Shira is Davka the dog. The dogs are the last ones. They're grouped with the wolf family. They're not by the Zevim. The last creature to speak up, because l'chara, they're the last ones to recognize that there only is one Adon, one master, the dogs. And what's the pasuk? We go to Tehillim Kapitel Tzadihei and pasuk Vav. Bo nishtach v'menechra nivracha l'fnei Hashem Oseinu. They recognize too that there is only one creator of the world. Let's all bow down together. The dog can recognize that it's not be'etzem, a master. Its human master is not its master. The Ribono Shalom is its master. That's it. And if Hashem wants a dog to be quiet, that dog is going to learn to be quiet as it stands as an Evan in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Then and only then do we bring the Makas to a close. Only then is Makas B'choros over. That's the schar that they get. Why? Because if you know how to stand in silence before your Creator, when you're in the midst of demonstrating Avdus, that's Avdus. I don't speak unless the Borei Olam wants me to speak. If Chanani, Meshav, Azariah darshan a kavachomer from the frogs, then why can't we darshan a kavachomer from the dogs? The dogs, the Tolna Rebbe told us, got an amazing schar, because in the end of the day, the upshot remains it's more difficult to stay silent than it is to jump into a furnace. So what happens when we engage in tefillah? Ezohi avoda shebalev. Gemara Tainis Daf Beis. The avoda shebalev zohi tefillah. We're standing as an Evan in front of the Melech Malchi Malachim. So what is an Evan? An Evan is, I don't talk unless Hashem wants me to talk. I'll say those precious sacred words of the Nusach HaTefillah that Anshe Knesset Gedolah mandated. That's what I talk about. I don't take out my phones. I don't get distracted by texts, by emails, Chalila V'chas. If you're standing as an Evan in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you're being an Eved, Brachas Dafyun Beis V'Ragleim Rega Yeshora, utter servitude in front of the Almighty. Then what do you have to do? First and foremost, learn the Kavachomer, not from the frogs this time. Learn it from the dogs. They did something even greater. Learn what it means to be silent as you stand as a proud Eved Hashem. If the dogs can keep quiet, and that brought Makas B'choros, and that triggered the ensuing the Geula. You want a Geula Shlema? Learn the Kavachomer from the dogs. We have to learn to keep quiet. You're standing as an Evan in front of the Borei Olam. Keep quiet. Stay silent, because nothing's more important than turning solely to the Ribono Shalom to utter those precious words of the Tefillah. Not to talk. Keep the mouth closed, and that's going to bring about the Met Hashem, the Geula Shlema Meherav Yameinu Amen.
Amen.